best coverage of the top stories in sports. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page starts now.
Indeed it does, and great to have you with us on this Tuesday edition of the show. We got a lot to do over the next 60 minutes. We are loaded up. Sam Yarnell with the day off again. He'll be back tomorrow. Robin Lundberg of SI does a great job on women's hoops. Also, the Robin Lundberg Show on YouTube. We'll get some thoughts with him on the WNBA Playoffs. David Aardsma hangs out with us as well. Chat with him about all things baseball. A little bonus Aardsma today. Usually joins us on Thursdays. He'll be with us today for a couple of segments to get us caught up on everything going on in baseball before we have him back here on Thursday. And Chris Perkins will join us in 10 minutes. Sun-Sentinel in Miami. He does a great job. He's a columnist covering the Miami Dolphins. I want to get his thoughts right now on what is a bad situation. How hot is the seat right now for Mike McDaniel? That is something we will discuss with our friend Chris Perkins coming up in about 10 minutes. But we start things out in the NFL and a couple of Monday night games last night. First one had a good finish to it with the Texans coming from behind after really not being able to run the football the whole game against the Buccaneers. They get one big run when they need it. Boy, and Vita Vea, man, how good. We just showed him on the screen. There he is. How good is that guy? I mean, you talk about what the Buccaneers do, and it feels like so many times it begins and ends in the middle with Vita Vea. But the Texans in this game able to come from behind, get a lead. It looked like It looked like they were going to steal a game that they shouldn't win. Coming in at 0-1, first home game of the year. It felt like they were going to steal this game late from Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers. And there you see the touchdown run that gave them the lead with just over 2 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. But then, man, Baker Mayfield. That Mayfield magic that we just continue to see time and time again. And I mean, look, there have been great stories over the years in the NFL of guys being able to rehab their career, overcome odds from bad situations. Geno Smith, who was in the second game of the doubleheader, didn't play great last night, but you think of Geno Smith, drafted by the Jets into a bad, what wound up being a bad situation, wasn't long for New York, and ultimately wound up in Seattle, built himself a nice career there, trips to the playoffs, before eventually winding up in Las Vegas with the Raiders. And Baker Mayfield has had a similar type run. You think about it, with the Browns and the Panthers. He gets a cup of coffee, literally a cup of coffee with the Rams, and turns one game and one drive into an opportunity in Tampa Bay with the Buccaneers, where he has thrived in that franchise. And, they mentioned this on the Monday Night Football broadcast last night. It might have been Joe Buck that mentioned it, and kudos to him for doing so. Two offensive coordinators have become head coaches in this league with Baker Mayfield as their starting quarterback. I mean, as much as you could talk about the coaching trees and this and that, what Baker Mayfield has helped to do for two offensive coordinators that are now head coaches in the league is something that can't be overstated. But he makes this great run to get the Buccaneers into a position to win this game late, and they do. And he took a beating in this game. I mean, this guy just gets roughed up because that offensive line sometimes obviously struggles to protect him. And this is why Tampa Bay is still the favorite to win the NFC South when you look at that division. Atlanta doesn't wow you. And why everybody, looks at Tampa Bay and says this is a team that'll probably still win that division. As for the Texans, real quick, before we get to the second game. As for the Texans, there are big concerns there. C.J. Stroud has regressed, and there's no getting around it right now. This team came out like gangbusters the first year under D'Amico Ryans, and they're still very competitive. But now you look at Indianapolis, that's 2-0 to start. The Texans 0-2 to start. And Jacksonville hasn't been a slouch over the first couple of weeks of the season. They could have very easily won that game in Cincinnati on Sunday. Probably should have won that game in Cincinnati on Sunday. And it feels like there is a tide turning now in that NFC South. And I said you were going to get regression with C.J. Stroud. When I watched him in that first year and some of the throws he made and some of the plays he made, I said that doesn't carry over year to year to year. Running around and chucking the ball around the field, that doesn't work year to year to year. There needed to be some stability in terms of his play, and it just doesn't exist right now. So, remains to be seen how they bounce back from an 0-2 start. We know the statistics on what happens to teams that start out 0-2 in terms of their percentages of making the playoffs. But hats off to Baker Mayfield, man. Chargers go on the road. They are 2-0. And let's just say it right now. They are the class of the AFC West after beating the Raiders last night. And that defense that Jim Harbaugh has put together, that franchise has put together, continues to be the story right now. What they are doing from a defensive standpoint, they just completely shut down Geno Smith, who did not have his finest game last night. And these are some of the games, as much as Geno Smith is a wonderful story, and we're talking about, the things that he's been able to do to get himself into a position to get a nice contract, both in Seattle and now with Las Vegas. There are going to be nights like this with Geno Smith where you're just left scratching your head. 180 yards passing and 3 interceptions. And the Las Vegas offense just could not get it going. And if Justin Herbert is healthy, with this team playing the way that it's playing right now, would you pick against him after 2 weeks? When you look at a Chiefs team that is clearly not the same team that we've seen over the last half a decade? Would it shock you if the Chargers were the team to beat in that division? I know a lot of people were high on the Broncos. Everybody just kind of forgot about the Los Angeles Chargers as we went through the preseason. Everybody was talking about it being the Broncos as the potential heir apparent to the Kansas City Chiefs. What I've seen through the first 2 weeks right now, the class of that division is Los Angeles. 2-0. Beat 2 division opponents, so they're off to a great start in that regard. And again, I can say all the things I want about what I think of Jim Harbaugh as a human being. And ethically speaking and all of these different things. We all know what happened with Michigan and so on. There's no questioning his abilities as a football coach, which continue to shine through. They have got to keep Justin Herbert healthy for 17 games. And if they do, right now, they're probably the team that wins that division. We're going to talk some more football here in a couple of minutes. Chris Perkins of the Sun-Sentinel covers the Miami Dolphins. How hot is the seat right now for Mike McDaniel with the Dolphins off to a brutal 0-2 start? All right, we continue on this Tuesday edition of the show. David Aardsma talks baseball. The former big league reliever joins us in 10 minutes. Do a couple of baseball segments with him on the show. One of the things we talked about yesterday on the program was what is going on with the Miami Dolphins. It's a mess. Chris Perkins does a great job. Dolphins columnist with the Sun-Sentinel. So on a scale of 1 to 10, Chris Perkins, how hot is the seat right now for Mike McDaniels?
Oh, it's a 10. It is a 10. I mean, fans flew a banner. They did a GoFundMe, Jason, to finance the airplane, to fly the banner, to fire the general manager, Chris Greer, and to fire Mike McDaniel. Fans are livid right now, so it is definitely a 10.
All right. So, I mean, is a move imminent? What is ownership saying? I mean, is there any way to read the tea leaves here on how long ownership will allow this to go? I mean, this guy was the toast of the town. It felt like a year and a half ago. And just like that, this thing has turned on its head.
It has. It has flipped in a hot second here, and we don't know what owner Steve Ross is thinking. I saw him in the bowels of Lucas Oil Stadium after the season opening loss 33-8 to Indianapolis, and I shook his hand. I didn't ask him anything about Mike McDaniel. He was surrounded by his people. One of the other writers that was there with me told Steve Ross that he liked it when Steve wore the plaid sports coats, and at least Steve was able to smile about that. I don't know that Steve Ross is smiling right now. Here's the thing, that they play Buffalo Thursday night. And by the way, The Dolphins are 3-10 in primetime games under Mike McDaniel. So, and they are also 1-6 against the Bills, 6-game losing streak, 0-4 at Highmark Stadium. This does not set up well for Mike McDaniel. Going beyond that, there's an 11-day break between the Buffalo game and the New York Jets game on Monday Night Football, another primetime game. So this does not set up for McDaniel if they lose, and especially if they get blown out. 11 days is a nice cushion to name an interim coach and have him kind of get acclimated before that Jets game. So right now, it does not set up well for Mike McDaniel surviving the weekend.
As the observer who sees this team up close and in person, how much of this, in your opinion, is coaching versus roster construction? Because we talk about Chris Greer and his job, obviously, being on the line too at some point here. How much of this is coaching versus roster construction?
I think most of it is coaching, but roster construction goes hand in hand with it. And look, Jason, to me, either both McDaniel and Greer stay or both McDaniel and Greer go. And it's looking like the latter. It's looking like both of them are going to go. Now, you don't usually see general managers fired during the season. He would probably be a Black Monday firing, the day after the season finale. But I just can't see confidence being very high for either of them in the building if they lose the Buffalo game. Now, with Mike McDaniel, he has a lot of control over the roster. And I fault Mike McDaniel because they won't get a strong run game. They won't play a more aggressive brand of football, and they keep relying on this deep passing game of Tua to Tyreek Hill, Tua to Jalen Waddle. By the way, over the last 2 seasons, they are 2-10 against playoff teams. Tua has 15 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, and neither Tyreek nor Waddle has a 100-yard game, which tells me that other teams know if we shut down that passing game, we can beat the Dolphins. And the Dolphins have no counterpunch. They don't have a strong physical run game to make the opponent bring that 8th man into the box, and then you go over the top to the defense. They continue doing the same thing.
If we play this thing out to its somewhat natural conclusion, if you consider what's going on right now, and they fire the head coach, maybe eventually they fire the general manager, but that remains to be seen. If this thing goes really bad, can you actually envision them, given what they've paid Tua Tagovailoa and what was invested in him? Could you see them drafting a quarterback if they're at the top of the draft?
100%. Yeah. Because look, Jason, if you get a new GM, he's going to want to name his own coach. If you get a new coach, he's going to want his own quarterback. So it kind of goes to pass, right? That you get everything new: GM, head coach, quarterback. Maybe Russell Wilson with Denver kind of set the stage for, you just absorb the loss and you keep it moving. That would probably be the most applicable model that I can think of. I mean, you're going to take a hit with Tua, but you're starting over anyway, and you want to give the new GM and the new coach, if they're named, as much of a say in their personnel as you can give them.
The Tyreek Hill situation, we've had you on before to talk about Tyreek in the past, and now we're talking about it as much from an off the field as we are from an on the field perspective. And the numbers were okay in the loss against the Patriots. He didn't find the end zone, but the numbers were okay. Give me a sense, what they do before the trade deadline here. I've heard Adam Schefter say that there are people calling. That there are teams calling, but nothing concrete has come out of those calls when it comes to making a deal for Tyreek Hill. We had Matt Verderam on here from SI, and he does a lot with the Chiefs, and he said, hey, the Chiefs would be a perfect fit. They need a receiver. Maybe reunite those two sides. Will Tyreek Hill be moved before the deadline in your mind?
I think it makes sense if this thing goes sideways with the Dolphins that you do move Tyreek Hill before the deadline. Next season, he's going to cost them more than $51 million against the salary cap. So whether this thing went well or doesn't go well, you would have to figure Tyreek, who will be 32 next year, probably was not going to be around. He's had a whole bunch of off-field incidents, and I think the fans are kind of sick of it, considering they haven't won a playoff game. I think it's different if they get to the AFC Championship and Tyreek has all this bad behavior, but they haven't even won a playoff game. So, yeah, I think it's very realistic that if this thing goes sideways for the Dolphins, they try to move Tyreek. They will move Tyreek. Well, they try to move Tyreek before the trade deadline because, as you know, there's an NFL investigation ongoing with Tyreek right now, so that's going to make him harder to move.
Yeah, and that's what I think the big issue is teams are going to be scared. Hey, we go and invest something in this guy, and then he's gone. But maybe it becomes a situation, Chris, and I only have about 15 seconds here, where they just take less just to get him off the roster and get that number off the cap.
It could be, and it could be that the team that wants him just figures we're just going to rent Tyreek and see if we can make a playoff run, and then the future takes care of itself. So, yeah, there's a good chance that works out in that way.
Chris Perkins does a great job on the Miami Dolphins from the Sun-Sentinel. Keep an eye on his work, especially right now with everything going on with the Dolphins. Chris, always appreciate you, my friend. Be well down there.
All right, thanks, Jason.
We're coming back. Lots more to do. David Aardsma next. Welcome back to the show. Let's talk some baseball. We totally blew off baseball yesterday on the show, but we had no choice. There was so much going on. We had to do it. Had to do it.
Not true.
Not true. It's just you tell me in a 6-segment show where I was going to fit it in with the college football, the NFL, the fight over the weekend. Nowhere to put it.
There's always a place for baseball in your hearts.
Listen, just rub some dirt on it. That's what I say. David Aardsma, the fine-looking gentleman you see on your screen, joins us, former big league reliever, closer. Hangs out with us usually on Thursdays on the show, but with Sam being off, me hanging out alone, I invited him to the party to hang out with us on a Tuesday for a change. Doesn't mean we don't want him on Thursday. It just means I needed him to talk some baseball with me today, because nobody wants to stare at me for 7 or 8 minutes just talking about baseball. Nobody wants to see that, so I thought I'd bring in the big guns. So David Aardsma is here. Let's talk about some of these, races and where we are here with a couple of weeks remaining in the regular season, David. And, now you almost start, if you're in some of these wild card chases and playoff races, pennant races and wild card stuff, you're almost playing these like they're playoff games, aren't you?
Oh, it's been playoff games since, I would say, for a lot of these teams, mid-August. Wow. It has to be. You have to have that mentality that is playoff games. Every series is important. Every game's important, especially when you get to September. You can't let off the gas pedal. And so when you have races like this, when you're American League, and how are the Guardians even still around? I still don't know. But you got the Guardians, Rangers, Royals still on that outside fringe, probably way on the outside looking in. Yeah. And the
Rangers and Guardians are still there, but the Royals are pretty much done now. 6 games
miracles
out.
Have to happen.
Yeah, 6 games. 6 games out. And I don't know what their schedule looks like, if they have, the Astros in their sights or anything like that. But the Astros, the slide that they've been on here, combined with what the Mariners have been able to do, how surprised are you with what the Mariners have been able to do here down the stretch?
We've known they've been a great team. We know they've been a complete team, with Cal Raleigh obviously leading them in every way possible. It was just, when are they going to find that real click? Because man for man, they might have one of the best teams in the American League. It was just, is it going to click? Are they going to play at home really good baseball? Because that's really been the question. They've been playing great baseball on the road all year. They played great baseball on the road last year. Are they going to play good baseball at home this year? And they finally started really doing it. It doesn't help that the Astros just kind of fallen off, and don't forget that the Astros came out of nowhere too, and kind of popped up from far beyond the reach and became leaders of the West. They're still a great team. I'm not counting the Astros out, even with the Yordan Alvarez injury, and that obviously could be horrible, or it could be a couple weeks. God, there's such a different lineup without him in it. But
here's the funny thing. I thought when they got Yordan back, I thought it was almost going to be like a bonus trade deadline deal when you didn't even have to give up anything, and that was going to push them over the top, if anything. And really, they've come back down to earth. Even though he was hitting, nobody else really was.
And that's the hard part. He came back, did exactly what he's supposed to do, and the rest of the lineup really wasn't. And here's the thing, the bullpen really wasn't doing it. The rotation had its days when they were looking amazing, But then overall, if you look at the whole course of the second half, the nobody really had picked it up. No one had done anything. And so that's the hard part, though. I'm not going to bet against this team. If I had to choose between the Astros and Guardians, or even Astros and Rangers at this point, I'm still have to pick the Astros just because they're the only team that's been there, done that consistently, and they know how to win when it matters. But we got about, 15 days left? They better turn that on.
The Blue Jays at 26 games over 500. At what point do we have to start taking them seriously as a World Series, like not just a contender, but as a team having a legitimate shot at winning a World Series right now?
Third best record in Major League Baseball, the best record in the American League.
But they're still not they're still not really getting the love. They're 8-1 to win the World Series, which is the fourth best odds. But it still feels like people aren't ready to take it seriously as far as them being able to win a World Series.
I think when you look at, obviously the Yankees are still right there. They're still in striking distance. Again, they've fallen back a little bit, but they're still in striking distance. It's the beasts of the National League, and that's really holding them down. I don't think it's the Blue Jays didn't jump off the page at the beginning of the season. They didn't make huge, crazy moves, obviously, outside of Santander in the offseason. And they didn't really make huge moves at the trade deadline. And that's when you, as an outsider, as a pundit like we are, you're looking at a team saying, okay, are you going to be that same exact team plus one player? Or are you going to be something different? Are you going to add more energy, add more juice when it matters, or add players that know how to win World Series titles? That's the only thing we're looking at and saying, where was that little extra oomph? And that's why I think a lot of people are holding back on them, is because where did you make a difference where you've kind of been mediocre forever, and now are you just playing really good, or are you really a good team?
Having Max Scherzer certainly helps. Just from a leadership standpoint, somebody that's been in that position, having somebody like that in your rotation obviously helps a great deal. Talk about him from a leadership standpoint and what he can help with that team as they go to try and make a postseason run.
I want to talk about the Blue Jays, but without you kind of have to talk about Baltimore in the same sentence for me when I talk about this.
Okay.
When you want to talk about leadership and you want to talk about a veteran coming in who, again, knows how to win, knows how to win when it matters the most, and has done it their whole career. There's a tale of two teams. When you bring in a player like Max Scherzer, even if he's not going out there and giving you the best starts every single day, you look at him and know what to expect. He's gonna grab players, pull them aside. He's gonna be able to be the example in the locker room, be the example in the weight room of who to be. The Orioles lost all of that this year, and you saw where they went. When you have a player like that comes out of Baltimore, Santander, and you have a player like Max Scherzer that you sign, you know what you're getting out of those guys at the very worst in the locker room. And that matters so much. We forget about that. It's just like the Red Sox. You move Rafi Devers, the team gets better. You move the best offensive player they've had in years, and the team gets better. That doesn't make any sense until you actually talk about locker room and you talk about what it means to be a team, what it means to be 26 players playing together every single day. You have to have that. When you have a player like Max, like Mad Max, absolutely insane, but he takes every day as serious as he can possibly be, and he wants and expects a World Series. You need players like that on your team.
By the way, you mentioned the Orioles. They've played a lot better here over the second half of the season. They're 70-80. And yes, they are dead last in the AL East. I get all that, but they've actually played a lot better here coming down the stretch. And what that portends for them in the offseason obviously still remains to be seen. We're going to do one more segment with our friend David Aardsma, who's hanging out with us on the show. I want to get to a couple of National League teams with him. By the way, the top three teams and the odds to win the World Series are National League teams, which just speaks to, obviously, what folks around the gambling community think about the NL strengths versus the AL. More with David Aardsma next. All right, coming up in 10 minutes, Robin Lundberg from SI and the Robin Lundberg Show over on YouTube. Talk about the WNBA playoffs with him. What's going on with Breanna Stewart? Suffered a gnarly, like a knee injury that did an MRI. Didn't look like a good injury. Talk to him about that and more. Hanging out with our friend David Aardsma, former big league reliever, closer. Usually hangs out with us on Thursdays, giving us a couple of segments today on the show as well. Checks in the mail. So I got to ask you, I'm going to take you to task in this segment on something in the final couple minutes of the segment. And I have not pre-prepped you for this, so I'm absolutely going to blindside you. But it probably won't be blindsided because you've spoken out on this topic. We talked about the AL, and at the end of the segment we mentioned how strong the National League is, and what the odds makers are telling us by the way they've set the odds, with the top 3 teams favored to win the World Series being National League teams. With what the Brewers have accomplished, obviously they've now clinched their division, and Chicago is no slouch, obviously. They're going to make the playoffs as a wild card team. Just give me a sense, because every year we sort of poo-poo the Brewers, but watching what they're doing right now, is this the time where you finally think it's different?
This is the first offense and pitching that I feel like they've not just been opportunistic. That's the only thing. I think this is a different team, because for a long time they feel like the Rays. Opportunistic. They're going to score just more than runs than you. They're not going to beat you with the bat. They're not going to destroy you with the pitching, but they're always going to outpitch you enough and just outscore you enough. They're going to win 3-2 or 10-9 if they have to, but they're not going to walk out there and be 10-9, 10-1, 10-1, 10-1. This is the first team I feel like they have a little bit more than that. It's like they're walking in with their own who they are. They don't have anything to prove to anybody else. They just are a team. There's a big difference. When you're on the Yankees, when you're on the Red Sox, you walk in every day and you're like, yeah, you know who we are. We're going to beat you. When you're the Brewers, I feel like it's like you don't respect us, so here we come, and we're going to get you. And this is the first year I feel like they're on everybody knows who they are. Everyone, they're on the front page. Everyone has been ready. They've got the best record in baseball. And so it's a look at us. I still don't know if you're walking into a series and you've got everything on the line in Yankee Stadium, if they have the team that's going to show up on the lights. Is this the Rays, the Minnesota Twins of the early 2000s? Or is this like a juggernaut? I don't think they're quite there yet. When you look at the lineup, I feel like you just need a little bit more pump. And you back in the bullpen. They got rid of all the back end oomph of that bullpen, which matters the most. They're a killer lineup. They've scored a ton of runs. Their ERA is incredible. But they've scored 20th in home runs, and they're 11th in bullpen ERA. Those are the two things. Like sometimes in the playoffs, like you just walk out there, hit a 3-run home run that first inning, it just changes the world. A lot of teams can do that. They're going to be playing against. They don't. And that bullpen, if you're 11th and you're relying on them for 5-6 innings in a reliever heavy playoff series, which everything is, it gets thin really, really quick. And that's the only 2 spots. And it's just like, and until you do it, I don't believe in you.
I got a minute here, and then I want to hit one more thing with you. So be quick on this. Diamondbacks, Reds, Giants. Mets the 3rd wild card right now. All 3 of the teams behind them, 2 games out. Which one catches the Mets, or are the Mets going to be that 3rd wild card?
Mets are going to be the 3rd wild card.
Wow.
Mets are going to be the 3rd wild card. This team was built for the World Series. It's not built for the regular season. I still believe in the roster, up to down.
Wow.
And
Frank Fleming, that is music to Frank Fleming's ears right now. Let me tell you.
Going to need it. They're going to need it. But again, they also have a very friendly rest of the season. They're about 500 on their winning percentage who they're playing.
All right. Last but not least, I got to take you to task. I don't know how many people have seen this. It was on social media over the weekend. Ken Rosenthal on your screen, ladies and gentlemen, for your viewing pleasure. Oh, there's the water being spilled on. And now he bumps into a cameraman, and look at the look he shoots that cameraman. Wow. Anything you need to know about Ken Rosenthal, you got right there in that little snapshot. And I also shared a story. I used to have a producer when I worked at ESPN Radio in Hartford, one of their affiliates there. I had a producer call Ken Rosenthal to get him on the show. Literally, this was the conversation verbatim. Ken Rosenthal picks up the phone. My producer says, "Hey, Ken, can we get you on the show? Talk with Jason Page, ESPN Radio, blah, blah, blah." And Ken Rosenthal's response was, "Don't you have enough guys over at ESPN that could talk baseball?" Click. That's all you need to know about Ken Rosenthal combined with that video. You, David Aardsma, clearly, maybe he's buddies. Maybe he lives out there in Scottsdale with all you highfalutin folks. But apparently, You think it was okay what Ken Rosenthal did to that poor cameraman? Instead of helping him up, he just left him there to wallow in his misery. You got a minute. Go.
Would I have helped him up? Yes. But that's me. But I would have stopped probably everything and forgotten I was live TV and helped him up. The look is horrible. The look is
look is not a good look.
I will give you all of that, but I do know this. I don't want to ever judge somebody for that worst moment, that worst look. The Ken Rosenthal I know has always been great to me. Is wonderful. Gone out of his way to know my family and to remember my kids and my wife. And I've never had that interaction. I was also never gotten knocked over. I think he was a lot more surprised than anything. Of like, what were you doing there? Why were you standing?
That look and that.
That was not. It wasn't a good look, and I'm not defending the look or the action, but I will say this: I do know the man, and he's always seemed to be a great guy to me. I've always had wonderful interaction.
David Aardsma, ladies and gentlemen. Apparently the agent for Ken Rosenthal, hanging out with us on the show. We'll see you on Thursday. Say hi to Andrea. And,
there you go. See,
I always remember. Once you meet her, you can never forget her. We'll see you later. All right, 10 minutes from now, Odds and Ends wraps things up. Let's talk some WNBA. Playoffs, they're going on right now. And we've decided to bring in our friend Robin Lundberg, who does a great job with SI on women's basketball. Robin Lundberg Show on YouTube as well. He's everywhere, the omnipresent Robin Lundberg. We were just talking about it off the air, the loss of Caitlin Clark to this postseason. So I'll begin with that real quick, and then we'll get it out of the way and actually talk about the teams that are here and the players that are here. How devastating is that for the league?
Oh, I mean, I don't think it can be, overstated. Yeah, look at the helmet behind you, New York Giants, and then there's a football behind you. I remember last year going into the playoffs, as much as I was covering the WNBA and Caitlin Clark and the Fever, people were like, oh, football season's starting, that's done with. And I said, no, this is different. Something about her is different. And if you recall, even in the postseason, I think the Fever games were doing 2 million plus in the playoffs last year, in the midst of the NFL. And game one of their series against the Sun was on a NFL Sunday and still did big numbers. Now, that's not to say there hasn't been the trickle-down effect, because there has. Over the course of the year, the numbers are still up for the WNBA year to year. Now, that's inflated a bit because they were super high at the beginning, and the top-rated games are still Clark games, and 9 out of the top 10 ESPN games are still Indiana Fever games, whether Caitlin Clark played or not. But there is an absence of energy and casual fans coming over because of the loss of Caitlin Clark. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. The bright side of it is, because of what happened last year, there are more people who are now familiar with the other players, the other teams in the league. And something like the MVP debate between Nafisa Collier and Asia Wilson has taken on a life of its own, given, the influx of new fans to the product.
Let's talk about Las Vegas. We'll get back to Indiana if we have time here, because they lost their game one against Atlanta. How do you explain, as somebody who actually watches the games more than anybody I know, how do you explain what Las Vegas has done after basically meandering through more than half of the season? How does this happen?
Well, it's always a multitude of factors. This was a team that is a little long in the tooth at some positions, and some of those players gotten a little bit of a rhythm. Health is always matters. One thing that isn't talked about very much is Jackie Young. She's been absolutely tremendous, and she dealt with an injury last year. So, was slowed a little bit by the injury, and she's been brilliant, first or second team all WNBA, brilliant on top of what Asia Wilson has done. And then Chelsea Gray rounded into form. Credit Alyssa Smith. She's rejuvenated her career post the trade. And then Becky Hammond obviously knows what she's doing, right? So this was a team that it looked like they were left for dead early in the year and came together behind Wilson's dominant play. They made the trade for Smith. Young has thrived, and now they've won 17 games in a row, the last 3, I think, by 25 points.
Astonishing. How crippling is this injury? If what's the latest on the Breonna Stewart knee injury? When we talk about New York, they beat Phoenix in game 1. Didn't look good, but is there any sense right now as to what they could expect from her?
Well, I mean, look, she got an MRI, right? So anytime you're getting an MRI, there's a potential for it to be something that can shelve you for a while. Got to wait for the results to know. She was in tears on the sideline. That's never a great sign.
Yeah.
And
players know their own bodies, Robin.
Yeah. And if you go back and look at the time that she missed, because she missed a significant chunk of this season, it was night and day for the Liberty. I mean, they don't stand a chance without Breonna Stewart in the lineup.
Indiana without Caitlin Clark dropped game 1 to Atlanta. Do you give them a shot to get it to a game 3?
I think you got to give them a shot. Look, Atlanta's a real tough matchup for Indiana because they're bigger at every single position, essentially. If Aaliyah Boston gets in foul trouble, they're cooked. They got another injury, a concussion to Damiris Dantas, who is a role player for the Fever, reserve who plays bit minutes, but is probably their biggest, or isn't probably, is their biggest player off the bench that could have helped in this specific size matchup against Atlanta. And then Atlanta has these wings in Ryan Howard and Alicia Gray who give the Fever trouble. At home, they could get a boost to energy. They're going to have to shoot the ball well. Kelsey Mitchell's going to have to continue to be brilliant. So, yeah, I mean, they have a chance to extend the series, but they're just a little overmatched. And I think that the shame of it is you think about what could have been if Clark and say Cunningham were healthy and available, because I think this was an Indiana team that, even when Clark was going through that shooting slump, for instance, last time they played the Atlanta Dream, they beat them by 17 points, with her on the floor, because she makes that much of a difference with her ability to push the ball in transition, draw out the defense. She's actually a big guard too. So I have trouble seeing the Fever winning the series. I give them a little bit more than a puncher's chance tonight.
Minnesota is obviously one of the big stories we're following in this postseason, and they should beat Golden State. But we have to just spend at least a few seconds here, and that's all I have is about a minute, with Golden State doing what they've done and how it sets the blueprint, I guess, for future WNBA expansion franchises on how to build a winner right out of the gate.
Well, I think international scouting was a big thing that they did, and that's a new frontier in some ways for the WNBA. Now, some of the international scouting, you could say players are playing overseas already. Everybody knows each other, but they did a really good job with that, finding diamonds in the rough, obviously. And then it's another good case for expanding roster sizes, because if you're able to build this team through an expansion draft and free agency alone and finding players who weren't maybe getting playing time, like Veronica Burton, who's been terrific for them, there's more available players who can contribute than there are roster spots in the WNBA.
Robin, real quick, who wins, Brock Lesnar or John Cena, WrestlePalooza?
John Cena, I think. He's got to have like a hero moment or two during this last run, so conquering the beast makes sense.
I agree. Robin Lundberg does a great job over at SI. Also, check him out over on YouTube with the Robin Lundberg Show. Thank you, my friend. Have yourself a great one.
You got it.
We're coming back with more Sports Wrap. Odds and Ends wraps it up next. All right, just about time to put the wraps on this baby for a Tuesday. Before we go, a couple of reminders. First of all, if you have not done so yet, make sure to subscribe to the Sports Wrap with Jason Page podcast. It's available on all your favorite podcasting platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Odyssey, Amazon. You name it, we're on all of them. It's a great way to consume the show. It works in audio form just as well as it does in video. 45 minutes commercial-free, Monday through Friday. It is there for you, the Sports Wrap with Jason Page podcast. In addition to being on almost 300 affiliates around the U.S. and Canada, this show is also available on our YouTube channel, the Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel. If you have not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? We've got the show there Monday through Friday, commercial-free. Sometimes it's available before you even can see it on television. I know some of my TV affiliates might not like that, but there are some people that like to consume the show via YouTube, so that gives them an opportunity to do it there. We also have Sports Wrap Shorts, What are SportsWrap shorts? Sometimes they're clips from the show. Sometimes they're clips not from the show. SportsWrap shorts, when news breaks, we are there to talk about it on the YouTube channel with SportsWrap shorts. Go and subscribe to that YouTube channel, the SportsWrap with Jason Page YouTube channel. We would appreciate it greatly. And without any further delay, ladies and gentlemen, time for some odds and ends. Odds and ends. We didn't get to it in the opening segment. Big injury for the Chargers in that win against the Raiders. Khalil Mack suffered a pretty gnarly looking elbow injury. They're going to do an MRI to kind of get a sense for how bad that injury is, but he looked like he was in a lot of pain. You could see him in the sling there, jogged off the field, but was certainly in a lot of pain when that injury took place. Chargers coach Jim Harbaugh didn't really have much to say about it after the game, just said he'll undergo imaging and then they'll see where they go. He had a sack and a tackle in the opening quarter of that game before succumbing to that injury. Joe Burrow, as you know, is out for the Cincinnati Bengals, and we talked yesterday at length about what they might do at the quarterback position with that injury. Well, we now know they're going to stick with Jake Browning as their starting quarterback, which is, again, with Kirk Cousins sitting out there, with Jameis Winston probably being available. I don't know how you don't at least make calls to those teams to find out what they would want. Maybe they have, for all we know. Who are the backups to Jake Browning going to be? For depth, well, the Bengals have added Sean Clifford and Mike White to the practice squad. I mean, it says all you need to know about, the Bengals and the direction they're going to go with trying to, weather the storm, if you will, while Joe Burrow is out. That they think the combination of Jake Browning, Sean Clifford, and Mike White is good enough to win football games in that ultra-competitive AFC North. Good luck, Bengals fans. I feel for you. This felt like a year where you could at least be a playoff team, and then you take your chances with one of the best quarterbacks in the game in Joe Burrow, and now you're left at the mercy of however long he's out with this turf toe injury, the surgery to come up after the swelling goes down, at least 12 weeks on the shelf for him. And Sean Clifford and Mike White following Jake Browning, those are the answers right now for that franchise. Shrug emoji. That's what I got for you. Last but not least, odds and ends. Why is Prime Video on your screen right now? We all know they're trying to do things when it comes to sports. We know they've added the NBA, which will begin in earnest soon enough over on Prime Video. We know what they've done with multiple sporting events. Yankee games are on there for those of you that are Yankee fans watching the show. They have Yankee games that you can watch on Prime Video. Well, the folks at Prime Video continue to make strides into major sporting events. The latest, this one, the Masters, a tradition unlike any other. Hello, friends. The Masters, which you can see on CBS and ESPN, now will have first and second round coverage of the tournament, early first and second round coverage of the tournament available on Prime Video. And look, this is a coup for Prime. And I give them credit. They continue to try and fight. And Netflix has kind of gotten into this a little bit with the boxing that we talked about over the weekend. I wonder how much more you're going to see these streaming companies, Apple TV with MLS and Major League Baseball. You're going to have a Major League Baseball deal that's essentially coming up here at the end of the season with ESPN giving up its rights. Could Prime Video jump into the mix? Maybe Peacock jump into the mix? I mean, who's going to want to jump in and take those, those opportunities? Sports rights, sports broadcasting rights are so difficult to get your hands on that when they come available, you've got to jump in and make a play. And the folks at the Masters have never been bashful about trying to make a little money off their rights. And this is, the latest example of it with them running over to Prime Video and saying, hey, you could have, the rights to the first and second round. What do we care? And the folks at ESPN probably don't care that much. They get tons of coverage as it is, and we already know what CBS gets. But this continuing battle amongst all these media and streaming companies and streaming media companies in an attempt to get some of these sports rights deals, the battlefield is shifted. no longer just ABC, CBS, Fox, NBC. A lot of players in the game, all continuing to try and get their piece of those sports broadcasting rights. All right, that's going to do it for us on this Tuesday edition of the show. Sammy Arnell returns tomorrow after a couple of days off. Thank you to David Aardsma, Robin Lundberg, Chris Perkins. Thanks to you for watching all the time. We appreciate you. I'm Jason Page. That does it for Sports Wrap. We'll see you back here on Wednesday.